March 19th, 1952. In a modest apartment in Queens, New York, in the Jewish family of Max and Miriam Weinstein, a boy is born who will become one of the most powerful people on the planet and one of the most hated. No one knew then that this child would transform Hollywood into his own kingdom, where he would decide the fates of stars, determine which films would win Oscars and which would fade into obscurity. 1979 became the starting point of the empire. Together with his younger brother Bob, Harvey founded a tiny studio called Miramax, a name woven from the names of their parents, Miriam and Max, as a tender tribute to family love. But behind this touching story lurked hunger for power, recognition, control. The brothers started by organizing rock concerts in Buffalo, scraping together their first capital to then burst into the film world like punks, destroying rigid rules. For the first decade, Miramax remained in the shadows, promoting art house films for a narrow circle of connoisseurs. But everything changed in the early 90s when Weinstein revealed his gift, a sinister intuition that allowed him to turn independent cinema into box office gold. The period from 1992 to 1994 became a moment of metamorphosis. Miramax delivered a series of hits that elevated Harvey to Olympus. My Left Foot, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, films that thundered around the world. And then came Pulp Fiction. 1994, Quentin Tarantino's film with a budget of just $8 million grossed $214 million at the box office, an amount unthinkable for indie cinema. 7 Oscar nominations, the Palme d'Or at Cannes. Weinstein became the Oscar maker, a man whose name was whispered with admiration and fear. Miramax was dubbed the house that Quentin built. But everyone knew the truth. This house was built by Harvey. In 1993, Walt Disney acquired Miramax for $75 million, leaving the Weinstein brothers in complete control. Now, Harvey had unlimited resources, and he unleashed his empire at full power. The English Patient, Shakespeare in Love, Chicago, Good Will Hunting, one masterpiece after another, more than 300 Oscar nominations, more than 70 statuettes. Shakespeare in Love in 1998 brought Weinstein a personal Oscar and BAFTA, transforming the producer into an untouchable icon. With a budget of $15 million, the film grossed $415 million and won 4 Oscars, including Best Picture. Harvey learned to use film awards not as a symbol of prestige, but as a marketing weapon. He bought, pushed, manipulated, did everything to ensure his films took home the golden statuettes. In the 2000s, the brothers left Miramax and created a new empire, the Weinstein Company. The King's Speech, The Artist, the triumphant Lord of the Rings, Kill Bill, Inglourious Bastards, Django Unchained. More than 300 films released under his control, tens of billions of dollars in box office revenue. Weinstein monopolized the independent film market. He bought films not only for distribution, but also to prevent competitors from getting them. Harvey Weinstein became not just a producer, he became a king whose will determined the fates of thousands of people. Actresses dreamed of his attention, directors begged for meetings, studios trembled before his wrath. Among his close friends were Quentin Tarantino, Madonna, Hillary Clinton, Gwyneth Paltrow. He was a man who could turn an unknown actress into a star with a snap of his fingers or destroy a career forever. But empires built on fear are doomed to fall. And in the fall of 2017, the world would learn the truth that would shatter Harvey Weinstein's kingdom to its foundations. October 5th, 2017, the morning that destroyed an empire. On the pages of the New York Times appeared an article with a headline that shook the world. Harvey Weinstein paid off sexual harassment accusers for decades. Journalists Jodi Kantor and Megan Twohey gathered testimonies from dozens of women who had worked with the producer at Miramax and the Weinstein Company, uncovering a truth that Hollywood had hidden for nearly 30 years. But this was only the beginning. 5 days later, on October 10th, journalist Ronan Farrow published an even more devastating investigation in The New Yorker. And then the dam burst completely. One by one, women began to emerge from the shadow of silence in which they had spent years, sometimes decades. Rose McGowan, Ashley Judd, Angelina Jolie, Gwyneth Paltrow, Uma Thurman, Salma Hayek. Names that had shone on red carpets now became voices of accusation against a man who once seemed untouchable. In total, more than 80 women. 80 lives crippled by fear, manipulation, violence. Some stories reach back to the early 90s. Actress Annabella Sciorra recounted a rape in the winter of 1993 to 1994. Actress Dawn Dunning stated that in 2004, Weinstein invited her to group sex in exchange for roles in 3 films. Actress and model Tarala Wolf described how the producer lured her to his apartment and forced her into sex. The story sounded like a nightmare repeating for decades with frightening regularity. Weinstein invited women to hotel rooms under the pretext of business meetings, then appeared before them naked, demanded massages, promised film roles in exchange for sexual services. If women refused, their careers were destroyed. Ashley Judd, one of the first to speak publicly, later filed a lawsuit accusing the producer of destroying her career after her refusal. Director Peter Jackson confirmed Weinstein warned him that Judd would be a nightmare to work with, sabotaging her chances for a role in The Lord of the Rings. Blacklists, threats, revenge against those who dared to say no. Harvey's empire stood not only on talent and money, it rested on a foundation of fear. But the most shocking thing was not the scale of the crimes, but how long everyone knew and stayed silent. The New York Times investigation discovered that Weinstein had been paying women enormous sums for nearly 3 decades to sign non-disclosure agreements and not come forward with accusations. Payoffs, settlements, lawyers who forced victims into silence. A system created to protect a predator. Ronan Farrow, in his book Catch and Kill, revealed an even darker side of this silence machine. Weinstein didn't just pay victims. He blackmailed media. When NBC News attempted to publish Farrow's investigation in 2017, the producer allegedly threatened the network using compromising material on anchor Matt Lauer, who himself faced sexual harassment allegations. Weinstein collaborated with the tabloid National Enquirer, collecting dirt on those who might expose him. In 2015, the New York police even conducted a wiretap operation. Italian model Ambra Gutierrez recorded a conversation in which Weinstein admitted to touching her breast without permission. "Why did you touch my breast?" she asked. "I'm used to that," he replied, apologizing and promising not to do it again. But even this recording didn't stop him. The prosecutor's office didn't pursue charges. Weinstein was too powerful, too influential, too connected, until October 2017. The publications in the New York Times and the New Yorker triggered an avalanche. Within weeks, the Weinstein Company fired its founder. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences expelled him from its ranks. Friends turned away. Allies disappeared. The empire Harvey had built over 50 years collapsed in a matter of days. But most importantly, women finally spoke out. The hashtag #MeToo exploded on social media, becoming a global movement. Millions of women worldwide began sharing their stories of harassment and assault, shattering the culture of silence that had protected predators for decades. The Weinstein case ceased to be a private scandal. It became a symbol of systemic problems permeating the entire entertainment industry. The king had fallen, but justice was only beginning its work. And ahead, Harvey Weinstein faced a trial that would shake the world. January 6, 2020, a courtroom in Manhattan, New York. One of the most high-profile trials in American justice history begins. In the defendant's dock sits 67-year-old Harvey Weinstein, a man who just 3 years earlier was feared and revered like a god. Now he looks tired, aged, leaning on a walker, but his eyes still retain a glimmer of former confidence. The prosecution charges him with 5 counts: predatory sexual assault, 2 counts of first-degree rape, third-degree rape, and first-degree criminal sexual act. If the jury finds him guilty on all counts, the producer faces life imprisonment. The defense insists everything was consensual. Women maintained relationships with Weinstein voluntarily, hoping for career opportunities. The battle is just beginning. The key witnesses are Mimi Haleye and Jessica Mann, 2 women whose testimonies will become the axis of the entire trial. Their stories are stories of pain, humiliation, and destroyed lives. Mimi Haleye, former assistant on the reality show Project Runway, takes the stand first. Her voice trembles, but she speaks clearly. In the summer of 2006, Weinstein invited her to his Manhattan apartment ostensibly to discuss work. When she entered, the producer lunged at her, pinned her to the couch, and forcibly performed oral sex on her. She tried to resist, but Weinstein was much stronger. After the assault, Haleye felt broken, humiliated, and feared her career would end if she spoke out. Then the court hears Jessica Mann. Her testimony shakes the courtroom so profoundly that people gasp audibly. Mann, a former actress, now a hairstylist, describes years of abusive relationship with Weinstein that began in 2013. She recounts how the producer raped her at the DoubleTree Hotel in New York in the spring of 2013. Weinstein was supposed to meet her and her friends for breakfast, but instead booked a room. When Mann tried to flee, he slammed the door twice, preventing her escape. "He ordered me to undress and get on the bed. His voice sounded like a drill sergeant on a parade ground," Mann testifies through tears. She complied. Weinstein positioned himself on top of her and raped her. "I couldn't breathe. He was so heavy. I remember staring at the TV, trying to disconnect from what was happening. But the most shocking part isn't just the violence. Mann reveals that after the rape, she continued to see Weinstein. The defense uses this against her, trying to prove she was in the relationship voluntarily. But Mann explains their connection was toxic, manipulative, abusive. It was like dealing with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, she says. He could be charming and generous, but everything changed depending on whether he got what he wanted. She describes a second rape at the Peninsula Hotel, where she worked as a hairstylist. When Mann told Weinstein she was dating an actor, the producer became enraged, yanked her from her chair, and screamed, "You owe me one more time." He forcibly tore off her clothes, leaving scratches on her legs, and raped her again. During her testimony, Mann describes intimate details of Weinstein's body multiple times, shocking specifics that elicit gasps in the courtroom. She recounts once seeing a syringe in the trash. After Googling the name later, she learned the medication was for treating erectile dysfunction. The trial lasts more than a month. In addition to Halle and Mann, several other women take the stand, describing similar patterns of Weinstein's behavior. Actresses, models, assistants all recount how the producer lured them to hotel rooms, appeared naked, demanded massages, then attacked. February 24th, 2020. The jury delivers its verdict. The courtroom freezes. The court clerk reads, "Guilty on 2 counts out of 5. Weinstein is found guilty of first-degree criminal sexual act against Mimi Halea and third-degree rape against Jessica Mann. But on the most serious charge, predatory sexual assault, which could have resulted in life imprisonment, he is acquitted." The defense announces it will appeal. The prosecution demands maximum or near maximum sentencing. And Weinstein sits, pale and motionless, understanding his life is over. March 11th, 2020. Judge James Burke announces the sentence, 23 years in prison, 20 years for criminal sexual act, and 3 years for third-degree rape. Considering Weinstein's age, 67, and the state of his health, lawyers state this is effectively a life sentence. There's a chance he won't survive even these 23 years. Harvey Weinstein is led from the courtroom in handcuffs. The king of Hollywood becomes prisoner number, but this isn't the end yet. Ahead lies a new trial, new accusations, and slow deterioration behind bars. March 11th, 2020. Harvey Weinstein hears his sentence, 23 years in prison, and is led from the courtroom in handcuffs. But before he can step through the prison gates, his heart refuses to function, literally. Immediately after sentencing, the producer complains of chest pains and is rushed to the hospital. Heart surgery. For a 72-year-old man with dozens of chronic conditions, this could be the end. But Weinstein survives, and he's sent to Rikers Island. The name of this New York prison sounds like a curse. Opened in 1908, Rikers has earned a reputation as one of America's most brutal and inhumane prisons. Former inmates compare it to a torture chamber. Overcrowding, violence, lack of medical care, guards who don't treat inmates as human beings. Those sent here are still awaiting trial or sentencing. Rikers is not a correctional facility, but a detention center, but temporary can stretch into months, sometimes years. For a man who once lived in Manhattan penthouses, flew private jets, and dined with presidents, Rikers becomes hell on earth. Cells where temperatures drop to freezing cold, dirty bedding that isn't changed for weeks, absence of basic hygiene. Weinstein, who moves with a walker, is shackled in handcuffs every time he leaves his cell, even on the way to the medical unit. Yard time, virtually inaccessible due to staff shortages. Interaction with other inmates, almost non-existent. Loneliness, cold, pain. But the worst part is medical care, or rather, the lack thereof. Weinstein suffers from a whole bouquet of chronic conditions: heart problems, diabetes, high blood pressure, sleep apnea, spinal issues. He requires constant medical supervision, regular medication, physical therapy. But at Rikers, he receives the wrong medications that worsen his condition. Prison staff ignore his complaints. When he becomes critically ill, he's rushed to Bellevue Hospital in Manhattan, but returned to Rikers before fully recovering. March 2020 transitions into April, and then something no one expected happens: the COVID-19 pandemic. Coronavirus sweeps through American prisons, turning them into infection hotspots. Rikers is no exception. Weinstein, whose immune system is already compromised, finds himself in a deadly risk zone. In late March, he himself approaches prison staff, suspecting he's infected. Tests confirm coronavirus. The producer is isolated in a separate cell. For several weeks, he battles the virus, which for someone his age and health condition could be a death sentence. But again, Weinstein survives. Recovery is slow, agonizing. The virus leaves traces that will haunt him for months. Weinstein's lawyers begin a war with the system. In November 2024, they file a legal claim against New York City, demanding $5 million in compensation for inadequate conditions and lack of medical care. The lawsuit states that Rikers is not a prison, but a place of torture. That their client is held in inhumane conditions, subjected to freezing temperatures, denied treatment, given wrong medications, that such treatment violates his constitutional rights. The defense insists if Weinstein isn't transferred to a hospital, he will die. Because of this mistreatment, he has been worn down considerably health-wise, and now faces the stress of trial in this condition, which may very well lead to serious health complications, even death, attorney Imran Ansari states. Meanwhile, contradictory reports emerge that Weinstein is allegedly receiving VIP treatment. In May 2024, independent outlet The City publishes material claiming the former producer is lying in a single-occupancy intensive care room with a television, phone, and toilet, rather than on the prisoner floor. The scandal erupts instantly. Weinstein's official representative denies these accusations. No preferential treatment, no VIP services, only the standard prisoner ward. His transfer to Rikers was due to pressure caused by news about what someone considered VIP services, his press secretary states. 10 days after the publication, Weinstein is returned to Rikers, back to the cold, filth, and pain. Prison life for Weinstein is isolation. He barely interacts with other inmates. His girlfriend, a young actress he met before his arrest, still keeps in touch but moved to Malibu. His roommate, pediatrician Kura, occasionally visits him. His children also come when they can. But Brother Bob, with whom he founded Miramax, no longer communicates with him. Financial disputes, old grievances, severed family ties, transfers between prisons and hospitals are the most humiliating and exhausting aspect of prison life for Weinstein. His lawyer explains the producer didn't fly on a luxurious private jet to the Los Angeles trial, as media reported. He was transported on a state medical aircraft, still shackled in handcuffs like an ordinary prisoner. The first months behind bars break Weinstein. A man who once controlled the fates of thousands is now completely deprived of control over his own life. Every day is a fight for survival. Every breath is a reminder that the empire has collapsed and his body is betraying him. But another blow awaits him ahead. A new trial, new accusations, and a sentence that will make freedom impossible. 73 years old, an age when the body no longer forgives mistakes, when every day could be the last. For Harvey Weinstein, imprisonment transforms from mere punishment into a slow, agonizing road to death. The list of diagnoses reads like a page from a medical horror handbook. Chronic myeloid leukemia, blood cancer, diabetes mellitus, requiring constant blood sugar monitoring, extensive ischemic heart disease and angina, his heart literally suffocating from lack of oxygen, obstructive sleep apnea, a condition where breathing stops during sleep, threatening death by asphyxiation, sciatica, spinal and leg pains making every step torture, thyroid problems, obesity, mobility difficulties. He can no longer walk without support. These aren't just illnesses. This is agony stretched across time. September 2024, Weinstein complains of chest pains. Prison guards finally react and transport him to Bellevue Hospital in Manhattan. Diagnosis: another heart problem. Emergency surgery required. Surgeons open his chest, work on his arteries, trying to prevent another heart attack. A 73-year-old man with blood cancer undergoes heart surgery in a prison hospital. His lawyer, Arthur Idala, describes his client's condition with a chilling comparison. Health-wise, he looks more like a train wreck. But surgery is only the beginning of new torments. After each hospitalization, Weinstein is sent back to Rikers too soon, without waiting for full recovery. Over the past year, he's been hospitalized 4 times. Each time his condition worsens. Each time he returns to a freezing cell where there's no clean underwear, where toilets don't work, where fungus grows on the walls. March 2025. New medical catastrophe. Tongue infection. Weinstein complains of mouth pain, difficulty swallowing. Prison doctors diagnose the infection incorrectly. They give him the wrong medications. His condition worsens. His tongue swells, becomes covered with sores. Only when the infection becomes critical is he rushed to the hospital again, where it's discovered that the diagnosis was wrong and the treatment exacerbated the problem. In March 2025, Weinstein gains 9 kilograms. 9 kilograms in 1 month. This isn't healthy weight gain. This is edema, a consequence of heart failure, hormonal imbalances, wrong medications. His body swells, joints refuse to function, breathing becomes even more difficult. Lawyer Imran Ansari visits his client in the cell and sees a picture that makes blood run cold. When I last visited him, I saw blood splatters on his prison uniform, likely from injections. in clothing that hadn't been washed for weeks, the lawyer testifies. On Weinstein's clothes, dried blood from medical procedures performed under unsanitary conditions. He didn't even have clean underwear. This cannot be called sanitary conditions for someone with serious health problems. Loss of teeth, dental care in prison, a luxury unavailable even to the most famous inmate. One tooth falls out, then another. His jaw deteriorates. Weinstein loses the ability to chew food normally. His prison diet, porridge, bread, soft, tasteless mush that requires no chewing. Vision problems. Lawyers mention that the producer is practically going blind. Diabetic retinopathy, a condition where elevated sugar levels destroy blood vessels in the eyes. Weinstein begins to see the world as if through frosted glass. Glasses don't help. Prison medicine ignores the problem. Inability to walk. Sciatica, spinal problems, obesity, edema. All this turns movement into torture. Weinstein moves on a walker slowly with difficulty. Every step is pain. In his cell, he's practically confined to bed. Muscles atrophy. He becomes disabled. July 2024. Another emergency hospitalization due to multiple health problems, including diabetes and high blood pressure. November 2024. Lawyers file a lawsuit against New York City for $5 million. In the lawsuit, they accuse Rikers Prison of medical negligence, unsanitary conditions, cruel treatment. It's like the gulag, they state. Because of this mistreatment, his health has seriously deteriorated. The Guardian quotes lawyer Ansari. Because of such cruel treatment, his health has been significantly undermined, and now he faces the stress of legal proceedings in this condition, which may lead to serious complications or even death. April 2025. Judge Curtis Farber finally approves the lawyer's motion. Weinstein is transferred from Rikers to Bellevue Hospital, where he will await his retrial. If this isn't done, the prisoner may become seriously ill or even die, the judge states. But this is no longer life. This is existence in a hospital room, surrounded by guards, in handcuffs, connected to IVs and monitors. 73 years old, blood cancer, destroyed heart, blindness, lost teeth, inability to walk. Harvey Weinstein is slowly rotting alive. His body betrays him, cell by cell, organ by organ, function by function, and ahead awaits another trial. A trial that may add more years to a sentence he's physically incapable of serving. 2022. Harvey Weinstein is already serving 23 years in New York, but justice hasn't finished settling accounts with him. California awaits its turn. Los Angeles, the city where Weinstein built his empire, where he was king, where for decades he raped women in luxury hotels. Now, this city demands retribution. The accusations stretch from the past like ghosts. 4 women stand against him. Their stories span the period from 2004 to 2013. Hotel rooms, business meetings that turned into nightmares, promises of roles followed by rape. The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office files 7 charges, 2 counts of rape and 5 counts of sexual assault. 70-year-old Weinstein, sick, broken, moving with a walker, faces trial again. He pleads not guilty. The defense insists everything was consensual. But the witnesses tell a different story. Jane Doe number 1, an Italian model and actress whose name is concealed. her testimony becomes the center of the trial. She recounts how in 2013, Weinstein lured her into a hotel room and raped her. What Harvey Weinstein did to me was the worst. His assault was excruciatingly traumatic. She testifies in court. For years, she remained silent, nursing her wounds, while he walked free. During this recent trial, and the almost 3 years leading up to it, I was asked to relive and lay bare the most horrific and humiliating experience of my entire life with complete strangers, the general public, and even my own family in ways so harmful, more harmful than you can even imagine. Jane Doe, number 3, a massage therapist who accuses Weinstein of sexual assault in a hotel room in 2010. Jane Doe, number 4. Jennifer Siebel Newsom, film producer, wife of California Governor Gavin Newsom. Her name was initially concealed, but during the trial, her attorney publicly named her. Newsom claims Weinstein raped her in 2005 at the Peninsula Hotel in Beverly Hills. A man who once could destroy careers with a word is now accused by the wife of one of America's most influential politicians. The trial lasts weeks. Emotional testimonies, cross-examinations. The defense tries to undermine the witnesses' credibility, claiming they lied about the nature of their relationships with Weinstein. Prosecutor Paul Thompson insists the women testified credibly, even under intense cross-examination. Weinstein's lawyers demand a new trial, arguing the judge improperly excluded evidence and gave erroneous instructions to the jury. Judge Lisa Lynch denies the motion. December 19th, 2022. After 10 days of agonizing deliberations, the jury delivers its verdict. Weinstein is found guilty on 3 counts out of 7. 1 count of rape of Jane Doe number 1 and 2 counts of sexual crimes against her. On the charge of sexual assault against Jane Doe number 3, the jury acquits him. On charges from Jennifer Siebel Newsom, Jane Doe number 4, the jury cannot reach consensus. Deadlock, the prosecution later decides not to pursue retrial on these counts. Jane Doe number 1's attorney, Elizabeth Fagan, states her client is heartened by the guilty verdict on several counts, but disappointed by incomplete justice. Newsom's attorney expresses similar disappointment. February 23, 2023. Judge Lisa Lynch announces the sentence: 16 years in prison, 8 years for the first count, 6 years for the second, 2 years for the third. Terms to be served consecutively, one after another. Weinstein is already serving 23 years under the New York sentence. Now, 16 more are added. 39 years. For a 70-year-old man with a bouquet of terminal illnesses, this isn't just a life sentence. It's a guarantee he'll die behind bars. But Weinstein doesn't give up. Lawyers file an appeal on the New York conviction. And in April 2024, something incredible happens. April 25th, 2024. The New York Court of Appeals, the state's highest judicial authority, overturns the 2020 conviction, 4 judges to 3. The decision, Judge James Burke, who presided over the case in 2020, made a critical error. He allowed prosecutors to call witnesses who testified about other alleged crimes by Weinstein not related to the charges filed. The court found this prejudiced the jury, causing them to judge Weinstein not for specific acts, but for his past behavior overall. The case is sent for retrial, new jury, but Weinstein remains in prison anyway. The Los Angeles conviction stands June 11, 2025. Retrial in Manhattan. This time, the jury again finds Weinstein guilty on one count and acquits on another. Details of the sentence aren't fully disclosed, but the fact remains, Weinstein is convicted again. The Los Angeles verdict, however, remains in effect. Unlike New York, California law allows testimony about previous alleged crimes as evidence of the defendant's propensity to commit sexual crimes. Such evidence was used in the California trial against Weinstein. The producer's lawyers will find it significantly harder to challenge this in California's appellate court than they succeeded in New York. 16 years remain in place. Even if the New York sentence is reduced or vacated, the California term guarantees Weinstein will spend the rest of his life in a prison cell. America's two coasts have rendered their verdict. Hollywood and New York, cities where he was a god, have now become the sites of his final fall. 73 years old, 16 years of California sentence, possible additional years from the revised New York case. The math is simple and merciless. Harvey Weinstein will never walk free. His body is deteriorating faster than the years pass. Ahead lies only slow decline. April 25th, 2024, 4 years after a sentence that seemed like the final chapter in Harvey Weinstein's story. But suddenly, a blow no one expected. The New York Court of Appeals, the state's highest judicial authority, issues a shocking decision. The 2020 conviction is overturned. 4 judges to 3. A split court, divided opinion. But the majority prevails. Judge Jenny Rivera reads the decision. Judge James Burke, who presided over the 2020 trial, made an egregious error. He allowed prosecutors to call as witnesses women whose accusations against Weinstein were not part of the formal charges. These women testified about alleged crimes the producer committed at other times, in other places, against other victims. Their testimony was used to demonstrate Weinstein's pattern of behavior, that he was a predator operating according to a specific scheme. But the appeals court ruled this is inadmissible. We conclude that the trial court improperly admitted testimony of uncharged prior sexual acts against persons other than the complainants of the underlying crimes, because that testimony served no material non-propensity purpose. The jury judged Weinstein not for specific crimes, but for his reputation, his past, his image as a monster. This prejudice violated his right to a fair trial. Moreover, the court ruled that Judge Burke erred in allowing prosecutors to question Weinstein about other instances of abuse and his behavior if he chose to testify. This pressure forced the producer not to testify in his own defense, undermining his constitutional right. The remedy for these egregious errors is a new trial. Weinstein's lawyer, Arthur Aidala, doesn't hide his emotions. This is a victory not only for Harvey Weinstein, but for all criminal defendants in New York State, he tells the press. He thanks the appeals court for upholding the most fundamental principles related to defendants' rights. Lead defense attorney Donna Rotunno adds, "Justice was served. This ruling extends beyond Harvey Weinstein. courts must not function on emotion. Weinstein, according to his lawyer, expressed relief. For the first time in years of imprisonment, a glimmer of hope appears. Perhaps he can get out of here. Perhaps the sentence will be reduced. Perhaps he'll spend his final years not in a freezing Rikers cell, but somewhere else. But the world reacts with horror and fury. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office announces it will pursue a new trial. We will do everything in our power to retry this case. We remain steadfast in our commitment to survivors of sexual assault. Emily Tuttle, Deputy Director of Communications, promises the fight will continue. The Me Too activists are shocked. Women who risk their reputations, careers, mental health to testify against Weinstein feel betrayed. Judge Madeline Singas, one of 3 who voted against overturning the conviction, writes an angry dissent. This decision perpetuates outdated notions of sexual violence and allows predators to escape accountability, she states. She argues the majority completely misunderstands the dynamics of sexual assault. The women of New York deserve better. Therefore, I dissent. But the decision takes effect. The conviction is vacated. The case is sent for retrial. April 15, 2025. Nearly a year later, jury selection begins for the new trial. Manhattan prepares again for courtroom drama. 3 accusers prepare to testify again. Mimi Halei, Jessica Mann, and a 3rd woman whose name remains undisclosed. But this time, the prosecution acts more cautiously. No witnesses whose accusations aren't part of the official case. No patterns of behavior. Only specific episodes. Only specific victims. Judge Curtis Farber, now presiding, ensures past mistakes aren't repeated. The trial lasts weeks. Jessica Mann again recounts how Weinstein raped her in a Manhattan hotel room in 2013. Mimi Halei again describes forced oral sex in 2006. The defense again insists everything was consensual. Women maintained relationships with the producer voluntarily, hoping for career opportunities. The jury, 7 women and 5 men, retires to deliberate. 5 days of agonizing debate. Tension in the room is so high that one juror states, "I can't go back there with the other jurors." Weinstein's lawyers request dismissal, but the judge refuses. Jurors continue their work. June 11, 2025. Verdict. A split decision, satisfying neither side. Weinstein is found guilty on one major charge, raping an actress in 2013, but acquitted on the second charge. And on the third charge, jurors cannot reach consensus. Deadlock. This isn't a complete victory for the prosecution. This isn't complete acquittal for the defense. This is a compromise leaving everyone dissatisfied. But the crucial point, Weinstein is convicted again. The hope that ignited a year ago extinguishes. He remains behind bars. Details of the new sentence aren't fully disclosed at time of publication, but the fact remains, the retrial confirmed his guilt. And in Los Angeles, 16 years still await him. The California conviction was untouched by appeal, and California law differs from New York. There, testimony about prior bad acts is admissible in sexual crime cases. Chances of challenging the California conviction are minimal. Hope was an illusion, a brief flash of light in the endless darkness of a prison cell. Harvey Weinstein will never walk free. 73 years old, blood cancer, destroyed heart, and sentences stretching across America's two coasts. Ahead lies only slow death, October 2024. Harvey Weinstein is already serving time at Rikers, his body falling apart, his heart failing, his vision fading. But prison doctors find something even more sinister. Blood tests show abnormalities. Additional tests confirm the worst-case scenario. A diagnosis that sounds like a death sentence: chronic myeloid leukemia, blood cancer, bone marrow cancer, one of the rarest and most insidious forms of oncology. Chronic myeloid leukemia is a malignant transformation of bone marrow cells, the organ that produces blood. The bone marrow begins producing abnormal leukocytes, white blood cells that should protect the body from infections, but instead become killers. These cancer cells multiply uncontrollably, displacing healthy ones, filling the bloodstream, infiltrating organs. Over time, they penetrate the liver, spleen, lymph nodes. The body slowly poisons itself. This is a rare disease. Only a few thousand cases are diagnosed worldwide annually. It affects men more often than women, and it's especially dangerous for people over 70. 72-year-old Weinstein falls into the high-risk category. Chronic myeloid leukemia develops slowly in the early stages. For months, sometimes years, the disease can be asymptomatic. A person doesn't know their bone marrow is already affected, but then the accelerated phase begins. Fatigue, weight loss, night sweats, bone pain, enlarged spleen pressing on the stomach, causing a feeling of fullness. And then, if untreated, comes blast crisis, an acute phase when the disease transitions to aggressive form and cancer cells fill the entire body. 15 to 30% of patients with chronic myeloid leukemia eventually develop acute myeloid leukemia, an even more lethal form of cancer. Without treatment, prognosis is measured in months. But modern medicine has learned to fight this disease. Targeted therapy, drugs that block specific molecules causing cancer cell growth. Chemotherapy, immunotherapy, in some cases, bone marrow transplant. With proper treatment, patients can live for years, decades. But Weinstein isn't in a private clinic with the world's best oncologists. He's in Rikers Island Prison, in a place where medical care is a luxury, not a right. In a place where even simple infections can become fatal. NBC News first reports the diagnosis on October 22nd. Sources close to the matter confirm Weinstein is undergoing treatment at the Rikers Island Prison Hospital. But what exactly does treatment mean in prison conditions? Craig Rothfeld, Weinstein's authorized healthcare representative in New York State, expresses profound dismay at speculation surrounding his client's medical condition. It is both troubling and unacceptable that such private and confidential health matters have become a subject of public discourse. Out of respect for Mr. Weinstein's privacy, we will offer no further comment. Lawyer Arthur Aidala declines to comment. Weinstein's longtime representative, Judah Engelmeyer, also remains silent. But information leaked to the press, and now the whole world knows. Harvey Weinstein has cancer. A month earlier, in September 2024, Weinstein was rushed to the hospital for emergency heart surgery. His heart was failing. Surgeons saved him. He was returned to Rikers. A week after surgery, he appeared in court and pleaded not guilty to a new charge of criminal sexual act in the first degree. His lawyers stated, "As we have said before, Mr. Weinstein suffers from a plethora of significant health issues that require ongoing treatment. Now, cancer is added to this list, a terminal disease requiring intensive therapy, constant monitoring, specialized medications. But Weinstein receives this treatment in a prison hospital, where he was given wrong medications for a tongue infection, where he was returned to cells prematurely after heart surgeries, where his prison uniform remained stained with dried blood from carelessly administered injections." Weinstein's lawyers filed a lawsuit against New York City in November 2024, accusing the prison of medical negligence. They demand $5 million in compensation. They insist their client's conditions are like the gulag. That lack of proper medical care is killing him. Now this lawsuit takes on new meaning. A man with blood cancer, a destroyed heart, diabetes, vision loss, inability to walk, is being held in conditions that could accelerate his death. Chronic myeloid leukemia isn't instant death. It's slow decline, months, maybe a year or two with proper treatment. But without adequate therapy, in conditions of stress, cold, unsanitary conditions, constant infections, the disease progresses faster. 72 years old, blood cancer, heart failure, diabetes, obesity, sleep apnea, spinal problems, loss of teeth, loss of vision, inability to walk. The math is simple. Harvey Weinstein is dying. Not quickly, not mercifully. Slowly, agonizingly, piece by piece, every cell in his bone marrow is turning cancerous. Every organ fails one after another, and all this happens in a freezing Rikers cell where even clean bedding is a luxury. Ahead lies only pain and slow decline. Prison doesn't just punish him, it's killing him, cell by cell, day by day, 23 hours a day, solitary confinement in a cell, 72 years old, wheelchair. This is no longer life. This is existence in a cell the size of a grave. Harvey Weinstein, a man who once ruled Hollywood from luxurious Manhattan offices, now spends his days in a Rikers Island prison cell, a cell the size of a parking space, concrete walls, metal bunk, rusty toilet that often doesn't work, no windows through which to see sunlight, cold that penetrates the bones. He sits in a wheelchair. His legs no longer support him. Sciatica, spinal problems, obesity, edema, all have rendered him disabled. Once mighty hands that signed contracts worth millions of dollars are now reduced to frail appendages. One hand is always secured to the armrest of his chair in accordance with prison regulations. He cannot stand without assistance. He cannot use the toilet without guards escorting him. Every movement is humiliation. Rikers prison rules classify Weinstein as a centrally monitored case, an inmate whose crimes are considered particularly high profile. Because of this status, he cannot move freely without escort. Every time he leaves his cell, he's tethered to his walker. The journey to the visitation area becomes a precarious and anxiety-inducing undertaking. Recently, he spent 8 hours in a wheelchair at the courthouse awaiting transport back to prison. 8 hours, chained, helpless. His clothes hang on him like a bag. Significant weight loss during incarceration has transformed him into a shadow of himself. A blue tie hangs loosely over a white dress shirt. At 72, he carries the weight of his mortality heavily upon him. Wispy hair, pale face, eyes that see almost nothing due to diabetic retinopathy, a mouth missing several teeth, a body failing piece by piece. Weinstein describes Rikers as a hellhole and a medieval situation. "I won't be there for April," he grimaces darkly. He complains that Riker's staff gave him wrong medications that morning and expresses concerns about breathing difficulties. He feels the treatment he receives is outrageous, especially considering his self-identified status as an innocent man. Despite a recent conviction for sex crimes in Los Angeles, daily life is monotony taken to absurdity. 23 hours a day he spends alone in his cell. 1 hour, if he's lucky, he's allowed out. But yard time is unavailable due to staff shortages. Interaction with other inmates is virtually non-existent. Craig Rothfeld, Weinstein's healthcare representative, confirms his client rarely interacts with other prisoners, leading to a lonely existence. He doesn't need face-to-face meetings, notes one of his lawyers. Due to prison regulations, he's tethered to his walker when outside his cell, making the journey to the visitation area precarious and anxiety-inducing. His girlfriend, a young actress he met before incarceration, remains a confidant, but has moved to Malibu. His roommate, pediatrician Curra, has visited him in prison, as have his children, who still care about him when it comes to the kids, according to a family associate. But Brother Bob, with whom he founded Miramax, no longer communicates with him. Legal disputes over financial matters have destroyed their bond. To pass endless hours of solitude, Weinstein reads. Books often rest on his lap. Biographies of notable figures, popular novels. He flips through pages with trembling hands, trying to forget. But even books cannot erase reality. He's dying in this cell. Transportation between prison and court is its own torture. Weinstein reluctantly accepts ankle restraints, but is not typically shackled to another inmate during transport. This isolation has led to complaints about being treated like a burden. 8 hours in a wheelchair at the courthouse. 8 hours where every minute stretches into eternity. Health issues have limited his ability to participate in any outdoor activities. And due to staff shortages, access to yard time is limited for all inmates. Rothfeld reiterates, Weinstein rarely interacts with other prisoners, leading to a lonely existence. If not for the California conviction, Rothfeld believes, Weinstein would likely be under home confinement, able to see his doctors freely. But California hasn't forgiven him. 16 years remain in effect. And so he remains here, in a freezing cell in a wheelchair with blood cancer with a destroyed heart. When brought to the courtroom, he resembles a frail Salieri, wispy hair, once mighty fists now reduced to frail appendages, one hand always secured to the armrest in accordance with regulations. His new tailored court attire hints at significant weight loss suffered during incarceration. A blue tie hangs loosely over a white dress shirt. At 72, he carries the weight of his mortality upon him. He compulsively calls his prison lawyer again and again. Desperate conversations, attempts to find an exit that doesn't exist. He reads biographies, He tries to understand how other great men survived their falls. But his fall is final. In September, an Associated Press report about 3 previously uncharged sex crimes led to a heart attack just 2 days later, necessitating emergency surgery. His body no longer withstands stress. Every news item, every court hearing, every day in prison is another step toward the grave. Rikers is no place for an old, sick man. It's a place for young, strong criminals who can survive conditions of violence, cold, unsanitary conditions. Weinstein isn't surviving, he's slowly dying, and every day in this cell brings him closer to the end. 23 hours in solitude, 1 hour, if lucky, of freedom. Wheelchair, chains, rusty toilet, books on his lap, and slow, inexorable decline. A cell the size of a grave, and Harvey Weinstein is already halfway in it. 80 women, 80 voices that remained silent for years, decades. Now they watch as Harvey Weinstein slowly rots alive in a prison cell, and a question arises that splits public opinion. Is this justice or revenge? Rose McGowan, one of the first who dared to name the predator, an actress whose career was destroyed after she refused Weinstein. In October 2017, she came forward with accusations, triggering an avalanche. "I survived," she wrote on social media. When the sentence was handed down in 2020, McGowan stated, "Today, justice has won. We won." But now, watching Weinstein die of cancer in a prison hospital, does she feel satisfaction or sympathy for a 72-year-old invalid confined to a wheelchair? McGowan remains silent. Ashley Judd, the actress who first told the New York Times about Weinstein's harassment in the 90s. She filed a lawsuit accusing the producer of destroying her career by warning directors like Peter Jackson that she would be a nightmare to work with. When the sentence was delivered, Judd stated, "We finally got what we deserved, acknowledgement of the truth." But is this truly justice when a man dies in conditions his lawyers call medieval torture? Judd gives no interviews on this topic. Angelina Jolie, Gwyneth Paltrow, Uma Thurman, Salma Hayek, A-list stars who remained silent for decades about Weinstein's harassment. Now they watch as the man who was once their boss, their mentor, their tormentor, transforms into a living corpse. Paltrow, who was once a close friend of Weinstein and called him the godfather of her career, revealed the producer harassed her in the early 90s. "I was frightened. I was young," she admitted. When Weinstein was sentenced to 23 years, she gave no public comment. Jessica Mann, the woman whose testimony became the center of the New York trial. She described how Weinstein raped her twice, how she couldn't breathe under his weight, how she stared at the television trying to disconnect from what was happening. At the retrial in 2025, she testified again, relived the nightmare publicly again, and again her accuser was found guilty, but not completely. What he did was the worst. His assault was excruciatingly traumatic, testified Jane Doe No. 1 at the Los Angeles trial, an Italian model whose name remains hidden. She recounted how for 3 years preceding the trial, she was asked to relive and lay bare the most horrific and humiliating experience of my entire life with complete strangers. When Weinstein's lawyer requested a reduced sentence, Jane Doe No. 1 wrote a letter to the judge. If he doesn't receive the maximum term, the message will be, "You can rape and nothing will happen to you." The judge sentenced Weinstein to 16 years. Mimi Halei, the woman who testified both in 2020 and 2025. Twice, she described how Weinstein forcibly performed oral sex on her in 2006. Twice, juries found him guilty. "Justice has prevailed," she stated after the first sentence. But now, as Weinstein lies in a prison hospital with blood cancer, diabetes, a destroyed heart, failing eyesight, is this justice? The Tatap Me Too movement was born from the Weinstein case. Millions of women worldwide began sharing their stories of harassment and assault. The hashtag became a symbol of global struggle against the culture of silence. Weinstein transformed from merely a convicted criminal into a symbol of systemic problems. When the New York Court of Appeals overturned the conviction in April 2024, Me Too activists were shocked. Judge Madeline Singas, one of 3 judges who voted against overturning, wrote an angry dissent. This decision perpetuates outdated notions of assault and allows predators to escape accountability. "The women of New York deserve better," she stated, but there's another voice, the voice of those asking an uncomfortable question. 72 years old, blood cancer, heart surgeries, inability to walk, blindness, loss of teeth, detention in conditions lawyers call like the gulag. "I won't be there for April," Weinstein himself says. His lawyers claim because of this mistreatment, his health has seriously deteriorated. Now he faces the stress of legal proceedings in this condition, which may lead to serious complications or even death. Where is the line between justice and cruelty? Weinstein committed monstrous crimes. This is a fact recognized by courts in 2 states. 80 women accused him of assault, harassment, rape. He destroyed careers, bought silence, blackmailed media. He built an empire on fear. But now, he's dying. Slowly, agonizingly, alone. And some wonder, has punishment turned into revenge? The victims remain silent. They watch, they wait. Justice has been served. Weinstein is in prison, his empire destroyed, his name synonymous with disgrace. But is it enough? Or is the only true justice the predator's death behind bars? History provides no answer, only facts. 72 years old, blood cancer, 39 years in prison, he'll never fully serve. The math is simple and merciless. Harvey Weinstein will die in prison, and 80 women will watch as the final chapter of their nightmare closes. Harvey Weinstein is no longer a human being. He's a symbol. An icon of the Not a Me Too movement, a living embodiment of systemic problems that corroded Hollywood from within for decades. But where does the symbol end and the human begin? When the New York Times and the New Yorker published their exposés in October 2017, Weinstein's name became a brand. The Weinstein effect, the name given to the wave of sexual harassment accusations that swept the world after his fall. Thousands of women in different countries and different industries began telling their stories. Weinstein became not just a criminal, he became a symbol of all predators who hid behind power and money for decades. But is it fair to judge one person as a symbol of an entire system? Weinstein was born March 19, 1952, in a modest Jewish family in Queens. A boy who grew up in an ordinary apartment, whose father Max traded diamonds and Mother Miriam worked. Nothing predicted this child would become one of the most influential people on the planet. Together with brother Bob, he founded Miramax in 1979. The name, a tribute of love to parents, Miriam and Max. Two brothers started organizing rock concerts, scraping together their first capital. They were rebels destroying Hollywood's rigid rules. They promoted art house cinema, gave chances to unknown directors. Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, $8 million budget, $214 million in box office, 7 Oscar nominations. Weinstein became the Oscar maker, the man who could turn independent cinema into box office gold. More than 300 films released under his control. More than 300 Oscar nominations. More than 70 statuettes. The English Patient, Shakespeare in Love, Chicago, Good Will Hunting, The King's Speech, The Lord of the Rings, Kill Bill, Django Unchained. He was a genius. He was a monster. These two truths exist simultaneously. Philosophers and cultural critics may ask, can we separate art from the artist? Can we enjoy Pulp Fiction knowing its producer was a rapist? Should we destroy Miramax's legacy because its founder committed monstrous crimes? History is full of examples of great people who were morally broken. Alcoholic artists, tyrannical composers, abusive writers. Their works remain masterpieces despite their personal darkness. But Weinstein is different. His crimes weren't personal weakness, they were systemic. He built an empire on fear, manipulation, violence. His genius was inseparable from his monstrosity. Now, as he lies in a prison hospital with blood cancer, going blind, toothless, confined to a wheelchair, is he still a symbol or just a dying old man? Lawyers insist he's a human with rights. He has the right to a fair trial. He has the right to proper medical care. He has the right to human dignity. Victims counter, he stripped them of dignity. He destroyed their lives. He turned their careers to ash. Why does he deserve compassion when they received none from him? Society splits. Some see a dying old man in medieval conditions. Others see a predator who finally got what he deserved. But the truth is more complex. Weinstein is both. He's a cinema genius who changed the industry. He's a serial rapist who destroyed dozens of lives. He's a symbol of systemic problems. He's a dying man in a prison cell. History doesn't forgive monsters, even if they created masterpieces. But history also doesn't forget the complexity of human nature. Weinstein will enter textbooks as the man whose fall changed the world. The mad of Me Too movement was born from his crimes. Millions of women found courage to speak because his victims emerged from shadow. The Weinstein paradox. His monstrosity created a revolution. His fall liberated thousands of voices. He became a catalyst for changes he feared most. 72 years old. Blood cancer, wheelchair, solitude in a cell, slow death. Harvey Weinstein is no longer the king of Hollywood. He's not the Oscar maker. He's not the powerful producer whose name opened any door. He's a symbol of an era that ended and a man paying for his crimes until his last breath. November 2025. Harvey Weinstein is still alive. 73 years old. Blood cancer, destroyed heart, blindness, inability to walk, but he's still breathing. Every day is a small miracle. and simultaneously continuation of torture. He lies in Bellevue Hospital in Manhattan, where he was transferred from Rikers in April 2025. Judge Curtis Farber approved the lawyer's motion. If this isn't done, the prisoner may become seriously ill or even die. But even in the hospital, he remains a prisoner. Guards, handcuffs, limited visits. June 2025. The retrial in New York delivers a verdict. Weinstein is found guilty on one charge, forcing Mimi Halle into oral sex in 2006. Acquitted on the second charge. On the third charge, jurors cannot reach consensus, a split verdict satisfying neither side. Sentencing hasn't been announced yet. But even if the New York term is reduced, California's 16 years remain in effect. 39 years total or less, depending on the new sentence. But for a 73-year-old man with blood cancer, this doesn't matter. Any number is a life sentence. What awaits Weinstein ahead? Medical prognosis. Chronic myeloid leukemia with proper treatment can provide years of life. But in prison conditions, with constant stress, without adequate therapy, the disease progresses faster. His heart has already undergone several surgeries. Diabetes destroys blood vessels. Sleep apnea threatens respiratory arrest every night. Obesity, spinal problems, blindness, loss of teeth. Each problem exacerbates another. Lawyers say he could die at any moment. I won't be there for April, Weinstein grimaces darkly. But April passed, May passed, June passed, and he's still alive. Legal prognosis, the defense continues fighting. Lawyers filed an appeal on the California conviction. They claim the judge made errors allowing testimony about previous crimes, but in California, legislation differs from New York. Such testimony is admissible. Chances of overturning the conviction are minimal. Even if the California conviction is overturned, which is unlikely, Weinstein remains in prison. The New York conviction, though revised, still provides years of imprisonment. Freedom is impossible. Human prognosis. Weinstein spends days in a hospital room reading books, calling lawyers, watching his body deteriorate. His girlfriend moved to Malibu. Brother Bob no longer communicates with him. Children visit when they can, but solitude remains his main companion. 23 hours a day in a hospital room, 1 hour, if lucky, of freedom. Wheelchair, chains, guards outside the door, books on his lap, and slow, inexorable decline. Prospects for release? Zero. Parole? Impossible with such convictions. Compassionate release for health? Theoretically possible, but highly unlikely for someone convicted of sexual crimes. Weinstein will die in custody. This isn't a question of if, it's a question of when. In a year, in 2, in a month. Cancer doesn't forgive. The heart doesn't forgive. Diabetes doesn't forgive. And prison is the most merciless judge of all. Harvey Weinstein's story has no finale because the ending hasn't been written yet. But the conclusion is known in advance. He will die behind bars alone, in pain. His name will remain in history as a symbol of an era that ended. His films will remain in cinema annals. His crimes will remain in victims' memories. And his body will turn to dust in a prison hospital. Finale without finale. A story ending slowly, agonizingly, without catharsis. Harvey Weinstein rots alive. and the world watches as the king of Hollywood turns to dust.